There's a point in your body that almost no doctor ever mentions during a consultation. It's a tiny spot the size of a coin that you've been ignoring for decades. And this silence comes at a very high price because while you sleep, while you work, while you spend hours sitting in the car or on the couch, something is happening inside you. Silently, invisibly, without pain and without any warning. And when the result finally shows up, most men don't connect the dots. They think it's age, they think it's normal, they think it's time to accept it. But it isn't. What's happening to you has a very specific cause. It has a name, it has an exact location in your body, and most importantly, it has a solution. And that solution begins by pressing a single point for 30 seconds. 30 seconds that most men go their entire lives without ever discovering. But before I show you exactly where this point is and what happens when you press it correctly, you first need to understand why your body has reached this point. Because if you don't understand the real cause, you'll keep treating the symptom and ignoring the problem, and nothing will change no matter how hard you try, how much you spend, or how long you wait. I'm Dr. Natália Castro. If you want to keep receiving important content about health after 60, subscribe to the channel and give this video a thumbs up. Now, back to what you really need to know. There's a narrative that doctors repeat and patients believe, and it's wrong in the vast majority of cases. When a man over 60 walks into the office and says his erections aren't what they used to be, the automatic response is always the same. Let's check your testosterone. They order the test, wait for the results, and in most cases, the report comes back completely normal. Testosterone within the expected range for your age. Nothing out of place, and the man just sits there staring at the paper, completely lost. If it's not hormones, then what is it? He leaves the office without a real answer and goes home carrying that gnawing feeling inside, that maybe it really is irreversible, that he's past the point of no return, that the only thing left to do is accept it. But it isn't. And the proof is exactly in what no one ever told you. In most cases, the problem is not your hormone levels in the blood. It's something much more concrete, much more physical, and much more treatable. Circulatory and nervous blockages that have been built up over the years. Brick by brick, habit by habit, position by position. A slow, painless, completely silent process that gradually compromises the communication between your brain and your intimate area so subtly that you never even notice when it started. Think of it like this. Your body already has everything it needs to function. The hormones are there. The desire is there. The biology is intact, but there's interference along the pathway. It's like an electrical wire that has been bent, crushed, and compressed for decades. The current still exists, the source still works, but the signal no longer reaches the destination with enough strength. And the result is something you already know. The question no one ever asks is, what exactly is being bent? What is compressing that wire? Where is this blockage located? And that's exactly where the answer changes everything, because it's in a place you've probably never paid any attention to in your entire life. In a moment, I'll show you precisely where it is, but first you need to understand the full mechanism. Without that, you'll press the wrong point the wrong way and feel absolutely nothing. Every time you sit down, the deep muscles of your pelvic floor go to work. They support the weight of your torso, stabilize your pelvis, and control internal pressure. This happens automatically. You don't even think about it. But over the years, especially after 50, these muscles become chronically contracted. It's not weakness, it's tension. A permanent state of tightness that installs itself so slowly you never feel the change happening. One day you simply notice that things are different and you can't say exactly when it started. And these chronically tense muscles are positioned exactly around the nerves and blood vessels that control erection. They act like a tourniquet. They squeeze from the outside in, constricting the arteries that should be free to dilate and compressing the nerves that should be transmitting clear signals. The more years that pass, the tighter this tourniquet becomes, the denser it gets, and the harder it is to release on its own. And here's the statistic that really shocks people. This process didn't start when you noticed the problem. It started much earlier, probably decades ago, silently, painlessly, accumulating resistance millimeter by millimeter, every year spent sitting for hours, every bad posture, every unresolved emotional tension added another layer to that blockage until the system could no longer compensate. And now you're here wanting to understand what to do. That already puts you ahead of 90% of men who still believe it's just age and there's nothing they can do. But before I show you the exact point and the correct technique, you need to understand what's happening at the cellular level. Because this understanding is what stops most men from making the mistake that turns a working technique into something useless. After age 50, the body starts producing less of a molecule called nitric oxide. If you've never heard of it, pay close attention because it's central to everything we're talking about. Nitric oxide is the chemical signal that tells arteries to relax and expand. Without enough of it, the small arteries that feed the erectile tissue simply can't open the way they should. It's like trying to push a large volume of water through a partially clogged hose. The pressure is there, but the passage is narrowed. The result is always the same: less firmness, less response, less consistency. At the same time, microscopic deposits begin to build up on the inner walls of those arteries. It's nothing that shows up on exams as serious cardiovascular disease. It's subtle, but it's enough to reduce the vessel diameter, make the walls less elastic, and limit the tissue's ability to fill completely and stay full long enough. The nerves change too. The nerves that carry arousal signals become slower. They don't stop working, but they take longer to fire. And when they do, the signal arrives weaker, more vulnerable to interference, and easier to block by muscle tension, mental stress, or accumulated fatigue. Now add it all together: tense muscles compressing vessels and nerves, arteries that don't dilate properly, slower nerve signals, and reduced nitric oxide production. You can see it's not a single problem. It's four factors working together, feeding and amplifying one another. And there's a fifth factor that multiplies everything and is almost never explained with the clarity it deserves. I'll get to that in a moment, but first you need to know the point, because without the point, none of the rest works. Comment below which Brazilian state or country you're watching from, because this affects men all over Brazil and most still think they're alone in this. You're not. Between the base of the scrotum and the posterior opening of the body lies a small area of tissue that most men have never noticed, never touched, and never considered important. That area is called the perineum, and through this tiny region pass structures that are absolutely essential for erectile function. First, there's the pudendal nerve, which carries arousal signals from the brain to the intimate area and back. It coordinates the entire erection response at the nervous level. When this nerve is compressed by the surrounding muscles, the signals arrive delayed, weak, and distorted. The body responds poorly, slowly, or sometimes not at all. There are also small arteries that deliver oxygenated blood directly to the base of the penis. These arteries need to be free to dilate. Any external compression, exactly what tense muscles cause, drastically reduces both the amount of blood that reaches the area and how quickly it arrives. Finally, there's a network of muscles that control how much blood enters the erectile tissue and how long it stays there. When these muscles are in chronic spasm, they can't do their job properly. The result is an erection that may appear but doesn't stay firm, doesn't reach the intensity it should, or simply doesn't show up when you need it most. So, when you press the perineum correctly for 30 seconds using the proper technique, you're not doing magic. You're sending a direct signal to the entire system. You're telling the nervous system it's safe to relax here. You're physically releasing the tension that has trapped nerves and arteries for years. You're reopening a passage that has been narrowed for a very long time. Many men feel a spreading warmth in the area within the first few minutes. Others feel a fullness or a different kind of heaviness, as if something that had been asleep for a long time is finally waking up. It's not an instant erection, it's the body remembering how to prepare itself to function. And when that first sensation appears, it's hard to describe because many men had simply forgotten what it felt like. But here's where most men make their biggest mistake. And it's why so many try the technique once or twice, feel nothing, and conclude it doesn't work for them. Pressing harder doesn't make it faster. Doing it quickly without conscious breathing basically wastes the entire exercise. Because what you're trying to do is convince a nervous system that has been on alert for decades to finally relax. And nervous systems don't relax under excessive pressure, in a hurry, or when the rest of the body is still tense. The technique actually begins before you even touch the point. Sit on a firm surface, a regular wooden or rigid plastic chair. It cannot be a soft couch or a reclining armchair because you need to feel exactly where your weight is for precision. On a soft surface, you lose the geometry and the access. Use 2 fingers. Locate the point right in the center between the base of the scrotum and the posterior opening. You'll feel a slight depression there, like a space between 2 muscle groups. You don't need intense force, just firm, gentle pressure, the same way you would press a tense spot on a tight shoulder to release it. Now, the most important part of the entire technique. Before applying any pressure, breathe from your abdomen. Place your hand on your belly. Inhale through your nose and feel your belly expand. Exhale through your nose and feel it contract. 3 seconds in, 3 seconds out. Do this for 1 full minute before you start pressing. This is not a ritual, it's pure physiology. Deep abdominal breathing directly activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the one responsible for relaxation, digestion, and sexual arousal. As long as the sympathetic fight or flight system is active, erection is biologically impossible. The body simply will not send blood to the intimate area when it believes it's under threat. Shallow chest breathing, which is how most men over 60 breathe automatically, keeps that state of alert switched on all day without you realizing it. Once your breathing is settled, apply firm, steady pressure to the point, no pulsing. Hold it for 10 seconds while continuing to breathe consciously. Then make very slow circular movements as if you were melting a knot of hot wax with your fingertip. It's not a fast massage, it's slow, circular, almost meditative pressure. Continue for a total of 30 seconds without rushing and without excessive force. What happens physiologically in those 30 seconds is real and measurable. The pelvic floor begins to release its chronic tension. The blood vessels dilate slightly. Blood starts flowing more freely where it needs to go. The pudendal nerve becomes less compressed and more responsive. Some men feel tingling as if a numb limb is finally waking up. Others feel warmth or a different kind of weight in the area. All of these are positive signs. The body reacting to the unblocking. You may feel some sensitivity in the first few days. That's normal and expected. You're finally paying attention to an area that has been tense and neglected for years. Sharp pain, however, means you're pressing too hard or in the wrong spot. If that happens, stop immediately and adjust. Now, the fifth factor I mentioned earlier, the one that silently multiplies everything, is chronic stress. Not the occasional bad day stress that disappears over the weekend. I'm talking about the stress that has become your body's new baseline state, so normalized that you no longer even notice it's there. Chronically elevated cortisol does three devastating things to erectile function. It directly reduces nitric oxide production. It decreases the sensitivity of peripheral nerves, including those in the intimate area. And it keeps the sympathetic nervous system permanently switched on with no real rest. When the sympathetic system never fully turns off, the parasympathetic system never fully takes control. And without the parasympathetic in charge, you don't get a high-quality erectile response. It may appear, but it disappears quickly, lacks firmness, or simply vanishes at the worst possible moment. And this is exactly where I need to warn you about something that goes beyond the technique itself. There are silent mistakes that men over 60 make every single day, thinking they're taking care of themselves, when in reality they're damaging the prostate and compromising intimate function long before any symptoms appear. Mistakes that seem completely harmless but accumulate microscopic damage year after year. Mistakes that will show up later. The only question is when and how serious they'll be. The medical guide to avoid the mistakes that damage the prostate after 60 is available right now, free, in the pinned comment below this video. Grab it before you continue, because the information in that guide directly complements everything we're talking about here and can completely change how you age. You can perform the technique perfectly every day, at the exact point, with the right breathing, and still progress slowly if invisible saboteurs are working against you during the rest of the day. And these saboteurs are so common, they're probably part of your routine right now without you realizing it. The first is staying seated for long periods without breaks. In that position, the pelvic floor learns to stay contracted. It becomes a permanent pattern. When you finally stand up, the muscles remain tense because the nervous system has forgotten how to fully relax in that area. It's like tightening a wet leather belt and letting it dry in that position. Much harder to loosen later. The way you sit also matters more than you think. If you sink your coccyx into the chair, you're literally compressing the perineum against the surface for hours every day, year after year. The second saboteur is automatic shallow breathing. Short chest breathing keeps the body in a mild but constant state of alert, enough to keep the intimate area permanently deprioritized throughout the day. The third is poor overall posture, shoulders rolled forward, head jutting out, spine curved. This compresses the pelvic nerves, shortens the hip flexors, and creates a cascade of tension that reaches straight into the intimate area. Every hour in this posture adds more resistance to the system you're trying to unblock. The fourth is insufficient hydration. When you don't drink enough water, your blood literally becomes thicker and less efficient at flowing through the small vessels that supply the erectile tissue. Alcohol at night makes all of this exponentially worse. It dehydrates you, creates inflammation, interferes with nerve communication, and ruins sleep quality in ways most men simply blame on age. All of these saboteurs are completely reversible. Stand up and walk for 5 minutes every hour you spend seated. Take 2 minutes of intentional abdominal breathing before bed. Do 60 seconds of hip flexor stretches every day. Drink 1 extra glass of water between meals. Cut back on alcohol at night. Each of these actions has a measurable effect. Together, they change your body's baseline state over the course of weeks. And when that baseline changes, the perineum point technique becomes exponentially more powerful because now you're no longer removing a blockage in the morning only to rebuild it throughout the day. And here's what happens when the results start to appear. And it goes far beyond the physical. When a man realizes his own body is responding again and that the decline is not a final sentence, something profound shifts in the way he relates to himself. Much of erectile dysfunction in men over 60 has a performance anxiety component that kicks in right after the first physical setback. You have one bad episode, you get apprehensive. The next time, that apprehension creates tension that sabotages the result before it even begins. The physical problem creates anxiety. The anxiety makes the physical problem worse. The cycle feeds itself. But when the body starts responding differently, even subtly, that apprehension loses its power. The parasympathetic system can take over more easily. The physical response improves. The cycle begins spinning in the opposite direction. And that's why consistency matters far more than the intensity of any single action. Your body is learning that this care isn't a week of desperation. It's a new way of relating to your own health. You are not broken. You are blocked muscularly, nervously, and circulatory. And this blockage has a specific, localized, and treatable solution. Now you know exactly where it is and how to release it, consistently and progressively. If this content made sense to you, if for the first time you felt that someone was truly explaining what's happening with your body without euphemisms and without shame, then you already understand what this channel is for. Men over 60 deserve quality information about their own bodies. And while this conversation still doesn't happen in routine medical appointments, it happens here. Subscribe to the channel because the next video might be exactly what you need to hear.